Ahoy there, future Ryan here. Thank you for joining us on our maiden voyage here on Rated Aargh. I would like to let you know before we get into the episode, my camera shut off while we were recording this. It came back on, but we did not get the rest of the recording. So about 25 minutes in or so, you will see a lot less of me than you will at the beginning. So we'll try to get that fixed for future episodes. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it with a friend. That's the easiest way for us to get the word out about our new show here on Rated Aargh. And let's go ahead and roll the intro and get into the episode.
Look at me, sure. I'm the captain. Captain James!
Ahoy there, welcome to Rated Aargh. Thank you for joining us here on our maiden voyage as we explore the realms of pirate cinema. Today we're taking a look through our spyglass at a little movie released by Disney on July 19th, 1950, called Treasure Island. My name is Ryan, and please join me in welcoming my co-captains Christian and Braxton. Guys, how are y'all doing today?
Ahoy there.
Ahoy there.
I'm only going to talk like this the whole time, no matter how many episodes we... I'm just thinking that's not going to happen.
I would love to see the commitment
What
from
if,
you to stick with a bit like that the entirety of all of these episodes that we do. I mean, that would be a sight to see for sure.
Nope, that's all I got.
Okay. Christian, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to dive into pirate movies that I've never seen before.
Dude,
Yeah.
Me too. This whole idea. So this is the first episode. We kind of do need to explain a little bit about what's going on
No,
here.
I don't think there's anything to explain at all. I think it makes perfect.
This whole idea started as sort of a joke that I made one night at an Outback when Braxton and I were eating, and I was trying to come up with a name for a movie podcast that's not about pirates, but I was like, what if we did a pirate movie podcast where we just watched a bunch of pirate movies or like piratey movies? Because I know some of these on our list are more pirate adjacent. They deal with like buried treasure or something like that, and it's not necessarily like strictly like your stereotypical pirate like you'll see in this movie, Treasure Island, or like a Pirates of the Caribbean or something like that. And you guys were like so on board. I was like, okay, we have to do this. Like, I don't know that I've ever seen you guys as excited about doing a podcast as this.
Pirates are interesting and funny, and there's a lot of movie history about them. But
And we
we
like movies.
The specificness also is what intrigued me. It's so specific that it's, I mean, not to say that, you'd never be done, but the finite, more specific nature of it was more interesting to think, okay, looking for these movies, finding them, and then also the joke of, okay, what movies could we pull in that count as having pirates in them, even if they don't?
Yep.
Like, I think you joked about Ice Age 4.
I think you joked about Ice Age 4.
I did, because I don't really want to watch it. I heard it's not very good at all, but it does include pirates.
Wait, you've never seen Ice Age 4?
No.
Oh my gosh.
Why would I need to watch another one after Dawn of the Dinosaurs?
Because
it's the perfect movie.
Ice Age. Okay, so I have a story that I don't want to take too long on because we need to get into the episode. But I'm pretty sure Ice Age 4 is the one that has the grandma sloth in it. And there's like a bonus feature on that DVD where she does a dance. And we will probably talk about this on the episode whenever we actually get to that movie at some point, whether it actually happens.
Episode 256.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a while probably. But at summer camp, where I was a counselor, they would play these videos for the kids up on the screens to like dance and, just trying to get a bunch of energy out. And one of them was this dance that the granny sloth did on the bonus features. And it was actually like really catchy, like surprising, like more catchy than it should have been for what it is. Anyway, that's my story. I don't want to go too far into that because it's easy for us to get off on a rabbit trail. But We also have
No,
have
that never
Christian.
happens.
Well, I know. So me and you, Braxton, we watch a lot of movies together. Christian also watches quite a few movies with us. But Christian is also like a really pirate expert. Would you say a pirate expert?
Pirate adjacent expert.
Pirate adjacent expert.
Yeah, maybe pirate adjacent. Well, I just grew up in a really cool environment to where I was surrounded by a lot of divers and treasure hunters and underwater archaeologists that were actually looking into real stories involving pirates. And so, as a kid, that really intrigued me, and I've spent my entire life getting my hands on every book that I could about pirates and trying to figure out who all these people were. And the really cool thing is that there is such a wide variety of people that became pirates. The only thing linking these people together is the specific act of piracy. So I've read every book, and now I get to see every movie. And I'm really excited to dive in to see what true history is in a lot of these, and see what tropes have leaked out to our folklore. And I'm a big someone who really appreciates treasure stories and folklore associated with pirates, even though I mean the overwhelming majority of these may have very little truth, if any. I just think it's such a cool idea and subset of characters throughout our history that have inspired us in that way and have continued through our storytelling. So I'm just excited for this challenge of diving into all these movies.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what you think about a lot of these because, I mean, like, my pirate knowledge, for the most part, is pretty stereotypical, I would say. I mean, I know that we've worked on some pirate, like, buried treasure stuff in the past. We've talked about things like that. But, I mean, I would still say most of my knowledge of pirates is, like, growing up watching, like, pirate-esque movies. I mean, I could think of like Peter Pan. I know that's probably one on our list with Captain Hook. I've watched a lot of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. And so like there's, a lot of like stereotypical things that I'm, pretty knowledgeable about, I guess, in terms of pirates. But in terms of like actual piracy and the things that pirates actually did back in the day, I'm really interested to see what your perspective is on that as well. I do want to go ahead and talk a little bit about Treasure Island just to kind of open us up and get us into the movie here. So Treasure Island was Disney's first all live action film. The movie is based on the adventure novel Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, which was originally titled The Sea Cook, A Story for Boys, which is a really good name change in my opinion. Treasure Island is much catchier than The Sea Cook, A Story for Boys. But around 1950, Walt Disney apparently had been like planning to make a Treasure Island style movie for a while, and he decided to... I think he was planning to make it animated, but he was struggling to get profits out of the United Kingdom from his animated films that were over there. The UK had kind of tied up funds after like post-war restrictions and stuff, and they wanted those funds to be reinvested into the UK and the UK like film industry as well. And so instead of trying to go up and set a new animation studio up over there, Walt Disney was like, hey, I've thought about making this Treasure Island movie for a while. So let's hire some actors and see if we can film a live action movie. And that, that's kind of the more traditional medium at the time. Animation is, really popular now, but it was not quite as popular in 1950.
Right. They were essentially the ones that were making the animated feature films.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah. And then as far as I'm aware, Treasure Island was filmed entirely in the United Kingdom, and they list like several filming locations on Wikipedia and IMDb and stuff, but all of them seem to be within the United Kingdom. So that's kind of cool as well. I believe the child actor in this was also American, and like they were fined for that, which was kind of crazy because the UK
hours and stuff, right?
No, they got fined like $100 or something at the time, I think. So the UK apparently at the time wanted like all of the actors in all of the movies filmed in the UK to be from the United Kingdom, which is interesting. But they brought over an American boy And then whenever that got all found out, I think like Walt Disney and the boy and maybe someone else were all like fined for it, which is kind of nuts. But anyway,
And
that's a little bit
this
of
kid
like, yeah, go ahead.
also was the voice of Peter Pan.
Really?
Yes.
Hey.
He was also in some of the other Disney live action animated like combination movies. But not to get not to start on too much of a downer, but it is a not so fun fact that his dead body was discovered in 1968 in an abandoned building in Manhattan.
Wow. Okay. Way to kick off the show with like, yeah, yeah. He was the voice of Peter Pan. He also died.
Yeah. Well, he was one of the not one of the first examples, but probably one of the most highly popularized examples of a child star who never was able to really find success after being a child star.
Yeah.
And then his life kind of fell apart. It's a very sad story.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's rough. Anyway, so Treasure Island, if you have not seen it, hopefully by watching this episode, you will either want to go watch it or you'll decide not to go watch it. I do know Braxton was going to give some sort of a recommendation at the top of the show on whether or not the movie should be watched. I mean,
I think this is kind of a half and half. I think, sure, watch it if you really, really want to, but I think it's fine it's fine
to also
ingrained in
listen to
popular
us talk
culture,
about
the
it,
story
and then-
itself.
Yeah.
You're fine to listen to it without it.
Yeah.
Most of the thing that would make me say watch it before would be it's just an awesome, great movie overall.
Oh, for sure.
Or it's just insane. Like it has to be seen to be believed. And I hope we get into some of those as well at some point.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's good. For the first all live action film that Disney did, and it to be filmed in 1950, it's pretty darn good, man. They did a really good job casting it. It's filmed in some kind of unique locations. I was trying to find a clip. We have like one clip today that we're gonna show in a few minutes, but I was trying to find a clip of this character.
And it's not from this movie.
You're right, because that makes total sense. It's
from Anchorman.
I was trying to find a clip of this the guy in the movie named Ben Gunn. That's one of the actors one of the characters that Jim Harkins meets whenever he first gets on the island and runs away from the pirates. And I did not have a lot of luck finding a clip for this, but it's probably like one of the craziest like first encounters with a character that I can remember seeing in any movie. Like he's just insane, like legitimately insane, because he's been on this island for a number of years, just by himself, marooned.
I will say his whole bit about loving cheese and wanting cheese, I guess because he couldn't have it on the island. Yeah. That's how much I just like cheese now living in the civilized world. like I want it all the time.
I just want cheese, man. Just want cheese.
I love cheese.
I can tell. Yeah, I know. Christian, you were wanting to talk a little bit about some of the like the tropes or some things like that. What is your opinion on Treasure Island?
It's funny, once you've seen so many other pirate movies, being able to look back and say, oh, okay, this is exactly where these came from. A lot of the Pirates of the Caribbean series, I feel like, is just an homage to Treasure Island. Mm-hmm. There's so much in it when you go back and look at the history of cinema and the history of pirate cinema. So much of it can be owed to that. So on the flip side of what Braxton said, where it's a half and half, I would agree with that. And I would say that the half that I don't recommend watching it for is just general movie lovers, someone who says I could do without seeing a movie from 1950. But if you have a really big interest in history movies or movies about pirates, I would say definitely see this one at least once, just so in the future when you see one of these tropes come up, you know exactly where it comes from.
Yeah, there's a good point for movies like that where it's not necessarily, an insanely great movie, but its significance is almost bigger than itself. And this is one of those. It's kind of like a crossroads point in, movie history.
Yeah, and I mean, not to
you might say it's an X.
Mark this bot. So I don't want to get into this too much because this is what we're planning to do next week. But Pirates of the or next month, I should say, since this is a monthly podcast. But Pirates of the Caribbean is based on a ride from Disney World or Disneyland, one of the two.
And was that Land first?
Okay.
Why do I
wonder, does that have any inspiration from like a Treasure Island?
I think it has to. I don't think you could say it was directly, because otherwise I feel like they would have been like, it's the Treasure Island ride. You know what I mean? I think they knew it was a little more broad than that. But if you look at like even something I think you showed me, Ryan, I was like, oh, that's like concept art for Pirates of the Caribbean. Before they designed the animatronics and stuff, what costumes would they wear? What would their face look like? It looks like caricatures, or like what the concept art would be for Treasure Island. So that DNA has to be all mixed up in there together. It has to be.
I mean, I would think.
And so it's funny that they did this, right? Which then they had the ride, and then the ride inspired the movie, which then went back on the ride because they put Jack Sparrow on the ride. So it's all like a cycle.
Yeah, that's interesting. Treasure Island. This is also a movie that's been like remade several times.
True.
I know
because Treasure Planet is one of my favorite movies.
Yes, and Treasure Planet is a little bit different than just a straight up Treasure Island, but there are multiple Treasure Island movies.
Oh, yes.
It's not even like, oh, this is the only Treasure Island movie. No, they took the same exact story and made multiple movies out of it.
Yep. Miniseries, all that.
Yeah. So that may be something that we take a look at on the show as well in the future, is kind of looking at some of the newer Treasure Islands too, and kind of seeing like what the differences may be between like the newer ones and some of the originals. I mean, I guess, is this the original? Other than, there's a book.
Most of the time there's some other. Most of the time when you look up, is it the first one? They'll be like, there was a silent version made in 1918. You're like, okay. And it was 5 minutes long. Okay, does that count? Maybe. Probably no.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that might be interesting for us to do too, is kind of take a look and kind of compare and contrast like what maybe they not only pulled from the book, but maybe what they pulled from the original movie as well. And then what they were like, oh, this part sucks. Let's do something different. And kind of see like, is there another actor as good to be Long John Silver in a newer movie than the original?
That's a good one. Yeah.
So I don't know. Long John Silver is one of the main characters in this, and he has an accent that made Braxton, when we watched this the first time, go, what did he just say? And I know Christian has kind of done some research on this, because whenever we were initially talking about doing this show, he basically was like, oh, I think we should do this one first because of like all the things that have come from it. So would you care to talk about that for just a minute?
Yeah. So let's start with this premise. Okay. Braxton, I want you to be a pirate for the next 10 seconds. What's your first thought of what you're going to do?
I'm going to look for booty.
I mean, exactly. So why
in whatever form that may take.
Yeah. Why is it the voice that we associate with pirates? Like, why is that our first step to attributing that to an entire group of people that spanned hundreds of years?
That's true, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
came
who
from
could basically be anyone.
all over the world.
Why is that voice?
Well, but they
Could
were
have been
also from
anyone.
all over the world. It wasn't like, oh, this
Yeah,
is
exactly.
pirate land and they all come from this one land.
Yes.
Yeah. So I did a little bit of digging and I found a really good explanation for this. And it all comes down to Treasure Island. And that's why I wanted to do this first, is because there are so many hidden tropes in this movie that every single piece of pirate media later on, every single legend will be born out of.
And most of this comes from the book also, yes, right?
Yeah.
Rooted in the book.
It's absolutely rooted in the book. And I think it's I would also be interested in reading the book just to see how it compares.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about the pirate accent. So September, what is it? Like the 19th is Talk Like a Pirate Day. All in our culture, there is this ingrained idea of what a pirate sounds like. It's a lot of our, it was the inspiration for the naming of this podcast. So where does that come from?
That's true.
Well, as it turns out, there is a little bit of a historical basis in this pirate accent, and it all has to do with Treasure Island. So this main character, the primary pirate in this movie, is a guy named Long John Silver. Long John Silver in this movie is supposed to be from the area of Bristol and the United Kingdom in England. So when you are from Bristol, you are located within an area of England, the southwest corner that juts out into the sea. It's called West Country. West Country has a very notorious accent when you go into the rural sections of it, a lot of the farmers. It is called the West Country Yap. Now, this is, if I'm not mistaken, like the only part of the United Kingdom where ours are very heavily accented. I think they just had a lot of time, probably several centuries, where a language group moved over into the West Country. They became farmers. They just interacted among themselves, and they started to develop this weird accent where a lot of the syntax is weird. One thing that we've noted is instead of saying I am, they go back to the Old English saying of I be. So that's very common to hear that in the West Country. So Robert Newton is actually from this area. Robert Newton is the actor that was hired to portray this. And so he says, well, if Long John Silver is from Bristol, then I should just play up on the West Country accent and really over-exaggerate it. Like, of course, no one sounds like that today. But he says, maybe I can sound really just strange. I think he gives a wonderful performance in this. He is just weird and out there and the perfect villain for a movie.
He does a lot of eye and tongue acting. He does a lot of moving his face around in addition to his voice that just works.
And so I would be really interested in seeing like a script comparison to what Robert Newton did and how often he went off script and accidentally added all this stuff to Pirate Lexicon that was just him riffing and inventing all these phrases and stuff like that. But that is
right, because he could have been putting in
from.
phrases that he heard like his father or grandfather say or something, just throwing it in there.
The West Country was notorious for pirates. We know it produced possibly 2 or 3 of the big ones. There was Sir Francis Drake. There were rumors that area may have been the upbringing of Blackbeard or Edward Teach. And based on just some kind of studies in that area, they may have had somewhat similar accents. And there was a very popular tobacco supply line that went right past the West Country, and this was what pirates started to prey on. So it just kind of stuck, and I feel like this is kind of paid tribute to in the Pirates of the Caribbean series with Barbossa. Captain Barbossa, I feel like, is a huge callback to the accent that Robert What was his name? Robert Newton. Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like it's a huge callback to what Robert Newton created, and it was them saying we could choose any single accent that we want, but we want it to have that familiar pirate feel.
Right.
People just want comfort. A lot of times when you are making something like history based, you are willing to concede some truths to get it on the side of familiarity. And so when you kind of add some of these more stereotypical pirate accents, I feel like it just becomes more welcoming movie to a lot of people. But that's where the accent comes from.
That's cool though, because it's like that's, to me, that's not just a case where it's like, oh, it's just a trope that somebody came up with. It's interesting that the coincidence happened where, okay, they knew the novel started and took place here because Robert Louis Stevenson probably studied his history, which then made Disney hire an actor who was from there, who then applied his own knowledge of the area to it. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of the reality mixed in with the fantasy together.
Yeah. And watching this movie, not that there's anything that I have to say against the movie, but it feels like it kind of swung out of its shoes when it was popular at the time. Just because so much of our modern stories of pirates and this idea of buried treasure and the allure of that, a lot of that comes from this movie. And so when you go back and watch the movie, you're like, really? This didn't seem like it was going for the grand, top movie of the year, or even something that would be in a lot of people's homes. It seemed like a very niche production at the time. And so I feel like in a lot of ways, they vastly overperformed, and I'd love to see like a trend of the popularity over time, whether it immediately took off or if it became a cult classic much later.
Yeah. I mean, there's such a unique accent from Long John Silver. I do want to take a look at that. That is the only clip that we have for today's episode. So,
Top of the morning, gentlemen.
Ahoy, John Silver.
Sit ye down at table to starboard, if ye kindly will.
Wait, is this the reaction shot?
yes. The reaction shots are just so strange.
Oh my god.
For you, sir, piping and this be for Dr. Livesey. Asking his pardon for being that familiar, but Squire, he's told me so much about the two of ye, it comes natural to call ye by name, it do. And this'll be young Master Arkins, I'll be bound. Arkins. 'Tis a proper seafaring name, too.
You run your house well, my man, and you keep a good table, too.
Thank ye kindly, sir.
It isn't often I see fruit in an English tavern for breakfast.
Tis a rule of elf I learned while sailing under the immortal Ark. Rest it.
You sailed
Hear that? That I did, sir. I was
sailing under
59 at Quiberlin Bay. When you shipped with the Admiral, you never took scurvy from the salt pork and hardtack. Not with a barrel of apples aboard for the men to chew on.
Again, sometimes I really can't understand what he's saying.
Yeah, that's
when he speaks very
true.
quickly.
I thought it was interesting that at the end of that clip, he talks about having apples on board to prevent scurvy. So I looked up what scurvy was, and scurvy is a disease that occurs when you have a severe lack of vitamin C. I mean, typically you would think you'd want like oranges on a boat for vitamin C, or at least that's the first thing that came to my mind. But apples, apparently, I looked them up. They have like 10% of your daily vitamin C intake. So
the basic idea, I think, is almost any fruit will do the trick. But you got to make sure you have it with you.
Yeah.
And sometimes it would be hard to find if you got stuck out somewhere.
I'm also curious, how do they keep the apples ripe? Like, how long were they at sea on this journey, and how long would it, like, a barrel of apples last, where it doesn't, like, they just don't, rot and get disgusting to where you wouldn't be able to eat them?
That's a really good question. I feel like it might also be the same way how they kept bodies from decomposing. So a lot of times if someone died at sea or was killed in battle, and if they weren't buried at sea, what they would do to preserve the body is store them in a cool, like in the ship hold, in a barrel of rum. They would store the body in a barrel of rum. And apparently that was pretty good at keeping the body from decomposing long enough for them to get to the home port, and that person could be buried. So I'm wondering if they kept a lot of fruit in a barrel of rum as well, if that actually helped keep stuff for a long time.
I don't know. I'm not sure. In the movie, anyway, they legitimately just have apples in a barrel with like some hay at the bottom, because he jumps in it at one point, and he's just like on the deck basically with apples. So I don't know if that's something that they would have kept in rum, but it is not in the movie that way. Like in the movie, it is just a barrel with apples. I'm also
I think,
not entirely sure how long that this journey lasted.
Because it's assumed they go somewhere in the Caribbean, right? But that means it would have taken months, right?
I don't know. I don't know where, because they're in England, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That whole thing is set in England,
And they go to a tropical island.
Yeah, which apparently was still filmed in the UK somehow.
But yeah, it was a for real journey.
Yeah.
But I think by the way, anyone correct us on this fruit thing if we're wrong. I think part of the danger behind scurvy was, I could be wrong, but I think we're like, oh, people on ships were so stupid. They didn't know they just had to eat fruits to not get scurvy. I think they knew that. I think the problem was, how do you keep fresh fruit at hand, and not it spoiling or running out? And then scurvy becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have any on your ship and you're not in your destination, how do you get more? How do you get the vitamin C into your body?
Yeah, well, and I don't know. On a pirate ship,
I bet they also ate like dates and stuff, though, like dried fruit.
Probably, yeah. I would think that would also probably work. Apparently, scurvy just causes like general weakness, anemia, gum disease. There's like it doesn't allow wounds to heal very easily, and
I think that's where it gets you.
Get some like skin hemorrhages. So, yeah, man, it sounds rough. Like, can you imagine being at sea for a long time and getting scurvy?
God, that would suck.
You would never have that problem nowadays because we have so much preserved food. Like,
yeah. Well, also you can just go get a little packet of vitamin
emergency.
C. Yeah, we get more in that than any pirate ever had in their entire life.
Oh,
in that little packet,
for sure. Yeah, like pirates over here eating apples. I just thought it was interesting because he basically, like, the saying is an apple a day keeps the doctor away, but in this instance, an apple a day keeps the scurvy away.
Yes, indeed.
Which is just awesome.
But yeah, immediately from as soon as, again, in that point, he's just a shopkeeper. He's not even necessarily, you see him as the captain or anything.
Like a tavern guy, yeah.
But from the moment he starts speaking, you're like immediately drawn to whatever it is he's saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also interesting, like, how well the one-legged thing works, because he only has one leg for the entirety of the movie, but like they did a really good job with whatever like they did to hide his like leg from the knee down, because
it's mostly just like perspective and tucking it the right way.
I guess
it would be funny, and someone probably has. It would be funny to find like a frame where it's like blatantly like there. You can see him like.
I'm sure there is, right? Like,
yeah, there has to.
It's 1950.
Right, come on. They weren't trying that hard.
Yeah.
And again, most movies made before the 1980s and before, like people people didn't think that people would ever watch them again with scrutiny.
Yeah.
They would show up in the theater, maybe they'd be re-released 10 years later, and then that would be it.
Well,
no one would re-watch them and pause them. And
yeah. Speaking of a re-release, this movie was re-released. I'm trying to find what year it was. I think it was like 1985, if I'm remembering correctly.
That originally is what started the Disney Vault concept, was not releasing them out of the vault onto home video, but releasing them out of the vault back into theaters on an anniversary or something.
Yeah. Okay, so Walt Disney Productions re-released the film to U.S. theaters in 1975, and it didn't have a rating before that, so it had to be submitted to the MPAA to receive a rating, which they then gave the film a PG rating, because there is like a decent amount of violence in this. But at that time, Disney only had a G only policy, so they would not let like any Disney movies be anything other than G rated. And apparently that like rule Disney did like not budge on for like another 4 or 5 years, to where they would allow like PG ratings from Disney. So they ended up like cutting 9 minutes out of the film to give it a G rating. So I
can guess the exact 9 minutes.
I was gonna say I'm interested. I would be interested to see what 9 minutes that was, but you take it away, bud. Take it away.
I would guess it's probably the 2 or 3 times that someone gets explicitly stabbed.
Yeah.
And I would guess it's the 2 times in this children's movie when people get shot in the head, and it clearly shows it. Now, is it extremely violent? No, because it's 1950 and all they had was a little dot of red paint. But it shows a head and a gun, and it does not cut away. Kablam, ow, and then it cuts. Which is insane.
And the second time, like, he shoots him out of the crow's nest, and the guy, like, tumbles down the net and into the sea.
I wrote this down. Hold on. This is what happens. Because in the second time it happens, it's the kid, Jim Hawkins, and he says, "One more step and I'll blow your brains out." And then he proceeds to do that.
Yep. I mean, he meant what he said, man. He meant what he said.
Insane.
I would also maybe think they cut out when he gets kidnapped and like held at ransom, basically on the boat, like with a knife to his throat.
Yeah, that's true.
By Long John Silver. That is also probably one that I would think is like, oh yeah, they probably cut that out to give it a G rating.
Yeah.
Like they probably were like, oh yeah, he like willingly goes to shore to help the pirates find the treasure.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it kind of makes sense, the original version, because I could be wrong. I feel like they probably had in mind, like, yeah, it's a kid movie, but I think they were probably like, let's just make a good version of Treasure Island.
Yeah.
Which includes a little bit of violence and edge to it. Not a lot, but a little.
Yeah.
And it was later on that Disney got more and more burdened over time with the reputation of, we have to make things G and we have to, you know.
And now Disney makes anything they want. They do not give a crap. They're like, yeah.
Which that's actually why they started Touchstone Pictures in the late 80s, early 90s, so they could produce movies like, of any kind,
rating or graphicness.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, yeah, we're gonna have people get shot and laying in the street dead.
Mm-hmm. You know, the good stuff.
The good stuff. Oh man.
But let me see. You want me to get into a few of the little notes I have?
Yeah, man, go for it.
We'll do some of these rapid fire. Which
you have your cannons lined up, prepared to fire.
Okay, I just wanted to make the point of this, which is that Long John Silver he's an awesome character.
Mm-hmm.
Because in what other like piece of media can you think of where there's a character like him, where
then
you go
has a fish restaurant?
Yes, who has a fish restaurant, which then slowly over time becomes known as one of the worst fast food restaurants of all time. And it used to be half decent.
I mean, I used to get like catfish and stuff from there, and it was pretty darn good.
Yeah, it was good.
Get some fish and chips with some little like hush puppies.
Now it just seems strange.
I haven't been to a Long John Silver's in years. Like, I didn't even realize they still existed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what I was going to say is because he's an amazing character because you're first intrigued by him. You're like, oh, this is an interesting guy.
Yeah.
And he's so kind to Jim. And then it's revealed, okay, they're mutinous. They are not good guys by any stretch of the imagination, him or the crew. More so the crew, but him also.
More so the crew. You think?
And then that makes you question, like, it was him being kind to Jim a part of the con? Is he just a con man? Is he? And even when it twists back around, when it shows that, okay, he actually does have, somewhat of a good soul. He cares about not, hurting Jim and that kind of stuff. But even then, when it twists back around, you're like, okay, no, he's good. It never goes, he's redeemed.
Yeah, no. Then
it still makes you go,
like, see ya, we're going to try to murder you.
You
better get out of here.
He never completely turns.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool and interesting, right? That
he's like, I'd rather kill my crew than this young boy that's been nothing but kind to me.
Right. He still has a heart, but he is not completely squeaky clean redeemed either. And that's cool.
Nothing clean about him. He's been on a ship for weeks.
Yeah, no, none of the... This might have the dirtiest people of a lot.
They just look dirty.
Black Dog.
Yes.
Whatever makeup they put on him...
Yeah, it's
if I saw that man in real life, the smell that I feel like would come off of him.
I mean, the smell of all of them. Like, not even just him. Just all of them, man. They just look dirty. Just dirty.
Which is probably pretty accurate, right? I mean,
probably because they were out swabbing the poop deck,
Right, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I'm sure one of them, like, slipped and fell into it. Just a whole thing. Just a whole thing. Well, you know what's crazy, too, is that they take the lifeboats and go to shore, basically, like the smaller boats. They could have just, like, jumped in for a minute and, like, cleaned off. I mean...
We did never find out exactly why he was called Long John, did we?
No. I would guess because he's
just an interesting nickname.
Yeah.
Right, tall.
And they were like, oh, this would be way better suited for a restaurant.
Yep, that's exactly. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep, because that's what Robert Louis Stevenson was thinking about when he wrote Treasure Island to begin with. Was, hey, one of these days, this character is going to get famous enough that he's going to have a fish restaurant, and it's going to be combined with like Taco Bells and KFCs and stuff like that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Now, one thing I wanted to ask, and it may have gotten to it in the movie, but it might not have, and it might get into it in the book.
Okay.
But one of the main things that makes pirate stories questionable is why would someone bury a treasure and not just take it? Why? What scenario takes place where they would bury it and make a map to where it was hidden? Do they ever in this movie explain why it's hidden?
I don't.
They were all part of Flint's crew. Right? And Flint buried this treasure here, and he left Ben Gunn there.
Yes.
But what happened to him, and were they there?
I don't know. It's never really explained very well in the movie. Christian, you might be able to explain this better than I can. But I think essentially because it was the pirates were like so focused on going and like stealing from other ships and other people, like they would essentially have enough on their ship that if the ship sank or if they were attacked and someone like tried to steal all their stuff, they would then have nothing. Whereas if they went and buried it and were going to come back to it at another time without a crew and you just like load it all on a ship and then go and live your life after you're done with piracy, I think that was probably the intent from the pirates, was like, oh, we're going to go bury the treasure. That way, at some point, we can come back and get it without it, having to worry about it being stolen by someone else. And then, essentially you would be done with piracy at that point and like going and like attacking people. You would just go like live in some country
you would live like they live at the end or beginning of Fast 6.
Sure. Yeah.
Don't they live on an island?
It would be the beginning, because the fifth one is when they steal all the money from Brazil. So,
that's right. Yeah, I think it's the beginning of Fast 6, which again,
Fast
why would 7, 8, 9, and 10 ever happen if you got the money from 5 and you lived on an island?
Because the saga has to continue, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. They're kind of pirates, aren't they? Couldn't we...
No, they're not pirates.
In the first movie
no,
of DVD players?
Christian, did I do an okay job explaining that?
Yeah, you were right on. So let's unpack this.
Let's unbury this.
Why does every pirate story have the legend of them just burying silver and gold on beaches? Like the things most prone to hurricanes and storms and high tide, where the landscape is constantly changing. It just doesn't make sense. Now, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but there is only one recorded case in all of recorded history of a pirate actually being documented burying something in terms of like silver or gold, with the intention of coming back for it later. And it was a very small cache that was buried by Captain William Kidd at a place called Gardiner's Island in New York. Not exactly sure the specific day. I think it was around 1699 or 1700. But he was facing trial, and they said, "Tell us where you buried it." And they went, they dug it all up. They found it right then and there, and then used it as evidence against him in a trial. The fact that he had tried to conceal all this treasure right there. There are a few other instances of pirates burying stuff on beaches. However, it's usually like spices. Now, people think of piracy as this idea that you go out in a ship and you take nothing but silver and gold. Like you just find a ship and it is loaded with silver and gold. But the reality is that pirates were just thieves and resellers of whatever they could get their hands on, whether that might have been diving into the slave trade, diving into the spice trade, livestock.
Whatever the ship was carrying.
Whatever the ship was carrying, they would take it over, bring it to whatever port they had trust in, and then it would kind of be sold on black markets. There are some instances of pirates being caught doing that, and in the act of trying to unload a ship, they are burying, spices on the beach. They're trying to cover this ship, trying to cover the tracks. So there's really not that much in terms of recorded history that tells us, yes, these guys actually buried stuff on beach. Now, they probably unloaded a lot of stuff, a lot of valuables onto beaches, into small pirate havens, unloaded a lot of it into smaller boats, took it inland, but they were also spending a lot of it. And if you think about it, every time they had to take over a ship, probably half of what they got went straight back into ship repairs.
Right.
Mm-hmm. If you damage your ship every time you try to get paid, you've got to wreck your car every time you get money. So you can see that you're kind of coming at a loss a lot of times.
Right, and you have to spend the XP, right, to sort of upgrade your...
So there's really
back
not
into port
that...
like Jack Sparrow as his ship is sinking.
Yes.
Yeah. In terms of treasure legends, the truth is found in transport. It's the ships that they accidentally ran aground. Most of them, when they did run aground, they had time to get everything off onto a smaller ship. They would travel in fleets. So if they lost one ship, it wasn't a big deal. They could spread out whatever they needed to, get it to other ships, get it to a safe port. But this idea of burial, a lot of that comes straight, other than this one specific story with William Kidd, and we know that the people who were after him later dug it up. Other than that one specific story, there's really not much with pirates and this idea of burial. It's folklore, but it's a lot of fun to imagine it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. They had reasons to spend stuff. They had places to spend stuff. I mean, it was by the time that piracy had really taken hold, it was the 1650s, and it went on to almost the 1850s in the Gulf of Mexico. We had buildings by then. We had banks by then. We had banks that would have been in cahoots with pirates and would have been making a lot of money by getting big deposits from pirates and thieves. So the idea of burial just does not make
also
a lot
probably
of sense.
making money on insurance scams.
Yeah.
Right? That was one of the first reasons why insurance was invented, was ships lost to storms or piracy, right?
Yeah. And they lost a lot. I mean, there was an estimate that I read a few years ago that explained that about 10% of all of Spanish shipping, of all Spanish colonial wealth, is unaccounted for, because they would go down in hurricanes all the time, hurricanes and storms, just misreading nautical charts, things like that. I mean, they would lose a lot. There's a lot of pirate treasure at the bottom of the ocean. Not so sure there's that much on the sandy beaches.
Interesting.
And
I think that's probably one of the biggest things that this book and the movie brought to the pirate trope stuff is that. The buried treasure, X marks the spot, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Was
Directly
there
came
an
from
X
this.
marks the spot in this one? I don't remember there being an X marks the spot, because I was expecting one, and I don't think there was.
I think maybe it's on the map, but they don't say those words.
Okay.
Here's another fun fact for you. So, in terms of stuff being lost, so a lot of times these pirate havens would be raided. Pirates would be killed. They would be taken over again by the Spanish or the Dutch or the French or the English. Whoever had their stuff stolen, they would usually be back for it. Now, the average life of a pirate, now the most successful ones, the ones we always think about, from the moment you attacked your first ship, you're expected to live possibly another year. If you're lucky, you live 2 years on the run. Then you would be caught. Most of what you had stolen, if it had not been spent at that point, was then reclaimed by the English or whatever Caribbean governor had a noose out for you. You would be brought back to whatever the island authority would have been at the time, whatever island had a warrant out for you, and you would be publicly executed and would have lost everything. So this idea of all this stuff going on, or all this stuff being lost, hidden, I mean, it seems plausible. We just don't have record of anyone actually doing that, because the majority of the time, whenever you stole something, someone was coming after you to get it back, and they very much did do that. And a lot of times, you might have lost a ship or two in the battles that would ensue, and a lot of that would just end up in the bottom of the ocean.
Some of you may die, but that is a sacrifice that I am willing to make.
That's interesting. So I think people typically think about pirates stealing things like, gold and silver and jewels and jewelry and things like that, and not so much like spices and things to like cook with or food or supplies. And if they basically like captured a ship, I mean, they were taking everything that those people had and leaving them to die. Like, that was basically how things went. It wasn't like oh yeah, we're just gonna take your wealthy thing, like your valuables, and then we'll move on our marriage. No, they like took everything, and it's not often that you see which we might. I don't know. I've never seen one where like that was the intent. Was like we're gonna go and steal the spices from this ship, or like essential oils, or all this crazy stuff that they would have had. Like maybe somebody stole some like frankincense or something. Like, I don't know, who knows? But typically it's treasure. Like it is things that you would then bury. In terms of like the pirate realm that we know from movies and such, but that's like not actually so accurate to how actual piracy was done. And we see, we still hear about piracy some. We have Somali pirates. I'm sure we're going to watch Captain Phillips. I know that one's on our list. So like there are still things that are being done today. And I think a movie maybe like Captain Phillips kind of also maybe gives more of like a glimpse like to how piracy is today versus just like, oh yes, we're going to steal your booty and then we're going to bury it and then someone will find a map and come search for it one day.
Right.
It's literally a means of survival in Somalia.
And it's the same reason why Somalia has the piracy problem, right? Was the same reason why the west coast of England or the Caribbean or anywhere is at whatever time in history, if the transportation of goods is going through a certain area, there will be opportunists there to take what they
I feel like it maybe
can.
had some like allure to it as well, being a pirate, because pirates got really famous. Like it's no different than like people nowadays wanting to be like TikTok famous or still be a professional athlete or be an actor or a movie star. Like at the time it was like, oh, we could be a pirate, like let's go do that and go like sail the seas and steal things and risk our lives.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure that there was
probably
like
get
some
into
stardom
this
to it as well
with and I hope we will get into a lot of this with Captain Blood. Because I've seen that before. It's one of the earlier Errol Flynn pirate movies from the 40s. But that movie kind of gets into it, and Christian is going to be able to get into a lot of this later as well. Of part of the appeal of being a pirate was it was one of the first, or not one of the first, during its time period, right? The 1600s, 1700s. It was one of the only examples during the day of actual democracy. There was a captain, yes, but you saw it in the movie. They would take votes and have councils and discuss everything before they made a decision for the whole ship. In the government of England and France and almost everywhere else in the world, the monarchy and the church controlled everything. They made the decisions for you. And being on a ship, whether a pirate ship or not, it was you actually had a choice in your own destiny. And I think that appealed to, the average poor guy living in England or wherever.
Yeah, that's a good explanation. There were a lot of reasons that people were drawn to piracy. One of them in particular was equality. A lot of the time, there's one example I can think of. There was a pirate based in Puerto Rico for about 2 years. Like I said, they don't survive long, but he became a famous. He's kind of like the Robin Hood figure of Puerto Rico. His name is Roberto Cofresi, and he became known for adopting the kind of mixed racial and many different races of crew members into his crews. And that was, so revolutionary in the 1820s in Puerto Rico, because on the mainland, a lot of this societal norm was that there's kind of a caste system. This type of person is at the top, and based on the color of your skin, based on the environment that you're born into, this is how much money you're going to make in your life. This is, the early death that you're going to have because you are poor. Well, there were pirates promising jobs to these people. So there was a lot of futuristic and progressive, um, perspectives of piracy. There were a few well-known pirate codes, kind of early democratic rules of operations and how things were divided among people, and a kind of code of ethics that you had to follow. So,
And a lot of that gets into Pirates of the Caribbean as well, right? Of all
yeah,
the
yeah,
parlay and all the formality that they
yeah.
set up themselves to govern themselves.
The movie tropes often kind of close them into this. They always call them filthy, and they're always conveyed as dirty. Their faces are always filthy.
Which we just said.
Yeah, considered uneducated and on the fringes of society. And some of them were like that, but for the most part, they were very highly educated. A lot of these guys were from royal families, might have grown up in royal navies, and then piracy is something that they stepped into. They would have been very well educated in mathematics and navigation and astronomy and, kind of very early oceanography. So the trope of the uneducated, filthy pirate is not always true. They were very smart. One thing that I did see Ryan talk about earlier is that, yeah, everything had gone from silver and gold and emeralds and gems to spices, really. And 1500s, the Spanish started heading to Central and South America and kind of pillaging every pretty gem and stone and cultural artifact that they could find and bringing silver and gold out of these Central and South American mines. And these ships were ripe for the taking. And eventually Spain kind of got pretty wise to the idea, and they started outgunning the pirates. They started traveling in these giant fleets of gunships. And so they were no longer something to mess with anymore. And so the only thing that they could take was, small merchant ships full of spices. There are a few pirates that within the kind of piratical circle are sometimes considered
circle.
Yeah, are sometimes considered cowards because of how small the ships they were taking when they first started getting into piracy. They didn't always take big ships. Some of them took very small, like, which one was it? I don't remember the group right now, but I know they've faced a lot of backlash because early in their pirating career, they had started attacking a lot of just small fishing boats, just stealing valuables off of fishing boats.
The fish.
Yeah. It could have been as simple as that. I mean, that makes you a pirate. If you steal anything of value that
True,
is being
you wouldn't
transported
download
at
a car.
sea, you become a pirate.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
That's the first time I've said that. It's not going to be the last.
No, yeah, I feel like that's going to be said quite a bit.
And the funny thing is, they don't even say that in the commercial.
They don't. They do not
That's an
say that
internet
in the
meme.
commercial. Oh,
But
my
they do
goodness.
things like that.
Okay, I do kind of want to rope us back in a little bit, and we have lots of episodes coming. We're gonna have lots of time to talk about piratey things. So I don't want to
Absolutely.
just give all of it away in the first episode.
Yeah.
So I do kind of want to bring us back into Treasure Island a little bit, and I think I kind of want to start with just Christian's opinion on historical accuracy, just kind of overall for this movie. I know you would probably know better than I would, and we've talked about it quite a bit on this, but just kind of like how historically accurate do you think that this movie actually is?
Well, it definitely takes quite a few liberties with what pirates were and what they did. But I would say for the most part, like it's a pretty accurate representation of generally what life was like at the time, what kind of different societal beliefs were at the time. You got to see that there was a scene in there when it was revealed, or I think when the kid had mentioned a pirate, everyone started saying like,
I think they had met with Long John Silver, and he was getting a crew together, right? And they were talking, like walking through the streets, talking about like pirates in general. I think maybe too.
Yeah,
Or
and it
that
was a
there
big
was
taboo.
pirate, or that there was a pirate
Yeah,
that had
everybody
like
was
come
like-
in, and everyone was like, "Pirate! Like you can't say that too loud, or they'll arrest
Yeah.
you." Basically.
And so that is very much like how that would have been back then. And then ultimately, like giving them a little bit of leeway for the kind of Disney feel to it and adventure behind it. I would say that in terms of reality, I would give it like a 5 or 6. They may have had some consultants work on it and give them some what we knew back then of this is generally what happened. Obviously, with a lot of stuff on the ship, they got it right. I thought the ship was a pretty cool set.
Yeah, and
Um,
even like the wide shots of a somewhat real
Yeah.
boat
They
look really cool.
good.
Yeah. So I think it's a pretty good starting point for us. I think we're going to get a lot worse and a lot more fantastical and out there.
Oh, for sure.
And I think we're going to get some that are pretty close. But I think it's going to be tough
Yeah.
to get to that pretty close without including some of those fantasy tropes in there, just because that's what makes the genre.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I guess next up, let's go ahead and give this movie a review. We have a rating scale that we came up with that's called the Pieces of 8, which was a part of it was a brainchild from Braxton, is what I'm gonna say.
I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying it's the best I could think of at the time.
So I think individually we're probably going to give our own rating, and then we'll just kind of like average those.
Now, do we want to
average those
do
together?
something I mentioned before, which is, okay, what is its rating of piratiness
I mean, that's fine.
versus, okay, and then a rating for objectively as a movie.
I'm fine with that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So 0 to 8 is going to be our scale, and we're going to have, I guess, 2 ratings. One of which is just a piratiness rating, and the other is just a general movie rating for each movie that we do. And this one is the 1950 Treasure Island, in case you have forgotten, because we've talked about a number of.
In case you're tuning in right now.
In case you decided to just skip ahead to right now and miss everything else, and you just wanted to know what we rated the movie. So Braxton, I'm going to start with you, and I'll let you go first.
So I'm going to say, okay, my movie rating of it, I think, would be a 6 out of 8.
Okay.
Solid, didn't blow me away, but very solid and watchable. And I wasn't, for an old movie, I was never bored, and I never thought it moved slow, which for an older movie is a very significant achievement. It had pretty modern editing, actually. Piratiness, I think I would say it has to be an 8 out of 8.
Okay.
It has to be. It leaks it. It
really
leaks
does,
piratiness.
It really does. That's a very strong rating from you to begin with. Very
I might go
strong.
back and change it later.
No.
Nope, that's illegal.
Nope, illegal. Can't do that. Christian, I'll let you go next, bud.
As a standalone movie, if it was in any other genre, I think I would give it a 4 out of 8, just like right in the middle. Not necessarily good, not necessarily bad. Would I consider it a good movie? Outside of the context that it, caused within culture,
Yeah.
no. So I think it's right in the middle, 4 out of 8. I loved Robert Newton's performance. I think he gets an 8 out of 8 in this, but the rest of it, it's like, I feel like, I could watch a better movie. But the piratiness, or where this is in the pantheon of piracy, I feel like it has to be at the very top. I feel like this is an 8 out of 8, just by nature of it was the first. Everything else came after it. I mean, I feel like I'm talking about, Babe Ruth, to where like, oh, plenty of better athletes came after him, but he was the first. It's you feel like you're talking about something legendary where everything that's come out since has surpassed it, but you always have to pay tribute to the original. And I feel like this one should always be in that top tier in the pantheon of piracy.
Yeah, yeah.
Pantheon of piracy. I like that.
Pantheon of piracy. So I'll go ahead and give my rating. So I think generally as a movie, I was leaning like 4, but I think I'm gonna go 5 out of 8. I think I did enjoy it more than I think I did, and the only reason that I say that is because I'm not typically too fond of older movies in general. I don't know. They just don't really capture my attention quite the same as a lot of the newer stuff that's been coming out. Was that a gunshot?
Oh my God.
Who was
Something
that?
just exploded.
Lightning outside. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That was intense. So anyway, I think I'm gonna go 5 out of 8 on my overall movie rating, and then
I want to change mine to a 5 out of 8.
In terms of piratyness, man, I really think that you guys are pretty solid giving it an 8 out of 8. Like it is very, very piratey. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 8. Specifically, actually, I'm gonna go 7.5 out of 8. Specifically because there's almost no action that happens during the movie. Like for some reason, when I think of pirates, I think of them like swinging from ropes,
buckling a swash.
Yeah.
Swashbuckling.
There's no naval
pirates.
battle.
And there's like really almost none of that in Treasure Island. It's really like toned down. Like there's some fighting and some mutiny and things like that happening. Which, granted, the main pirate in it is one-legged, so it'd be kind of tough for him to do too much swashbuckling. But I don't know. When I think of like a pirate movie, like the first thing that comes to my mind, which is probably just because they're the most popular, I would say, are the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. And like there's a lot of swashbuckling that happens. There's lots of action. There's lots of like crazy pirate-esque things that I would say happen in those movies, and there just really wasn't a ton of that in Treasure Island. And not to say that Treasure Island is bad in any way. I think it should.
I do think that was a part where it was lacking, though.
Yeah, it was. That's where I felt it was kind of lacking. So I'm gonna go 7.5 out of 8 because it's almost there. Like it is so piratey, and it's like the basis for a lot of these other pirate movies that we have. But, there could have been a little more swashbuckling, a little more action in there. I would have liked to have seen like them shoot cannons at another ship or something, maybe. Like, I don't know. It was just a little lackluster in that department for me, and so I'm gonna stick with my 7.5. Cool. But still, like a really solid rating overall from all of us, which is saying something, because it just means we got off to a really good start. It's also interesting that we can, you guys can no longer go up in terms of piratiness. So there is that. There is that. You have pigeonholed yourself.
Again, we may edit these again. We'll see.
No.
That's illegal.
No.
I do want to quickly, and this may be edited as it goes along, but I did write down tropes that I saw in this movie.
Yeah, go for it.
And I want to eventually tally some of these up. You know what I mean? But this is, in very basic terms, this is what was in this movie.
I do have a question. Did you go back and watch this again before we recorded this, or have you just watched it the last time we watched
I did it? I wrote it down when we were watching.
Had you seen this movie before? I should have asked that at the beginning of the episode.
I read the book when I was a kid, and I think I'd seen part of this movie, but I'd never watched all of it.
Okay. I'd never watched it before. I know Christian has never seen it before other than when we watched it, in preparation for this. But I wasn't sure if you had seen it or not.
Right. We need to talk about that, though, with some of them, because some of them I have seen that we will be watching in the future.
Yeah.
But there was a one-legged man.
That's true.
obviously.
No peg leg.
No peg leg. No peg leg. There's a clear treasure chest. Rum is mentioned explicitly as being partaken by the pirates. They say the words ye, avast, yoho, landho, and arg. All that is mentioned.
They
in
also do say yo ho ho and a bottle of rum.
They do.
Specifically in this one.
Which was in the Pirates of the Caribbean ride song.
Yep.
There's a parrot that sits on his shoulder.
That's true. What was
That's straight out of this.
What was it? Was it Mr. Flint or Captain?
He called the parrot Captain Flint.
Captain Flint,
which was their evil old captain.
Yeah. Was that supposed to be something like Captain Flint was like reborn into a parrot? Or did they
No,
just
I think
name
it's
it
more
after
like
Captain Flint?
Sort of irony. They explicitly mention pieces of 8. They raise the skull and crossbones flag, which is the Jolly Roger. Technically, we can get into that later.
Jolly
Christian,
Roger.
right? The name Jolly Roger versus what it actually looked like.
Yeah.
There was a usage of cannonball. There was a cannon shot a cannonball and it exploded something. I don't remember what. There was a sword fight, although brief. A bit of. By the way, I want to look up at some point. What is a swash and why is it buckled?
Yeah. Okay. Write that down. Write that down.
And a mutiny does take place.
Okay.
Which is also that's
true.
obviously a big part of this movie.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think I saw an eye patch in the movie, which is interesting. There's no eye patch, at least on a significant character.
Yeah.
So that's something that you would think would be there, but is not. I don't think they say booty either.
Well, I don't think they did.
Well, no, maybe they
You
did.
did.
Right.
While
but
we
I
were
was
watching it, you probably uttered that word 10 or 15 times.
Right, but I was using it in the context of Long John Silver. But I think what we determined was that saying booty with a hard B in the pirate accent is very enjoyable.
I mean,
Go ahead, try it.
You have the most fun with that.
Try it.
Try it. Booty. I mean, it's not enjoyable, but it's not like overly enjoyable where I'm like, this is the greatest thing I've ever said.
You know what that is for me, though, right?
What?
It's whenever I make the Schwarzenegger noise.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast rated.
Okay.
That's a whole different one.
Do you have any other tropes before I start to
No,
close this out?
that's the main count that I got. So we'll see how that evolves over time.
Okay. Is there
I
anything
wrote
else?
down some, I believe.
Okay.
Okay.
Go for it.
We need to compile these later on
Yeah.
after we're done.
So there is a secret chest in the bar.
Yes.
That's very
yep.
tropey. There's a map handed off to the kid in the beginning. It's
Map.
very
Treasure
tropey. The scene that we watched earlier, I mean, it's like rapid fire for tropes. So you've got the accent.
Yeah.
He walks out with a missing leg. He immediately mentions scurvy, and then you find out, he's got a pet parrot. So it's like, wow, this scene did some heavy lifting in the future. Not only that, but it was a talking bird. I noted down that they said yo-ho and a bottle of rum. And that apparently was written in the book as Robert Louis Stevenson just invented a song that pirates sang. And that's what the lyric
Genius.
was. I did write down that they said amen instead of amen.
They also said semen a lot.
Yes, they did. He also pronounced Jim Hawkins' last name as Arkins.
Was it Hawkins? I thought it was
his
Harkins.
last name. No, his last name is Hawkins. Hawkins.
Mr.
But he says
Arkins.
Arkins.
Yeah.
So there's a marooned guy, which actually did happen. They did raise the skull and crossbones. They raised Jolly Roger. I will have to watch the movie again to see exactly whose that was, because different pirates actually had different variations of the Jolly Roger. So you might be able to
It was
pinpoint
just
that.
a skull and crossbones.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the placement of them is important because there's lots of them that have skull and crossbones, but they're in different, like some are below the skull, some are behind the skull.
True.
So,
Yeah, there were some guys who had their own specific flag. And then there's this treasure trope where there's always this old guy left behind who says, I know where to find it. You know, there's always one guy left behind that knows it and that knows the truth behind the treasure. He's a little bit crazy.
I think that guy was a bit crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, this movie actually is probably the only one that actually pays off on that. Because the other ones, you're like, well, crazy old man, why didn't you just get the treasure?
Yeah.
He actually did.
Yeah.
Yep.
He took it out of its hiding spot and moved it to his own secret hiding spot.
Somewhere else.
So they mentioned a parlay. They also
They
said
did mention a parlay.
they said shiver my timbers, not shiver me timbers. So
Oh,
I'm
really?
interested to see to where that got flipped. Another big trope in a lot of treasure legends is when they got to the treasure site, Long John Silver starts killing his crew. Now, I'm assuming that is, once everyone puts in the manpower to get it and to find it, then you start shooting everyone, and it's kind of, I'm going to take all this. And so that was
Right.
like a big danger with piracy, is that there had to be an actual structure and a promise of when we actually do retrieve this, something's going to happen. And you hear about that in so many pirate stories of, so-and-so left this treasure here on the beach. He killed one of his crew members. A lot of times they work it into the paranormal angle. They said, he killed a crew member, and now his ghost prevents people from ever finding the treasure again. It's a really common. And that goes all the way back to like Icelandic and Viking lore with draugrs and kind of zombies that guarded treasure. Yeah, and then I love at the end, they actually find the treasure. So they set out and do this, and they do the impossible that no one ever does, and they actually find treasure, and then they never get to take advantage of it.
Yeah, because what happens at the end?
Well, they get forced off.
'Cause-
So yeah.
Because
they're
Long
in
John Silver sails away in a little boat.
Yeah. He had loaded a lot of it in that boat,
In his little boat, right?
and they were taking it away, and they were like, well, his fate's going to be a lot worse than ours, so just leave him. I thought that was an interesting ending, that
Yeah.
they accomplished their task and then came away with nothing. Yet they came away with everything. They came away with their lives. So I thought that was cool. It was pretty well written for a movie of that time. It did have some complex kind of narratives weaved in there.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of a lot of pirate movies is like if they do find the treasure, like they don't actually get to keep it. Like I can't even think of how many like pirate treasures, even ones that are not specifically in a pirate movie. Like I know in a couple months, we're gonna do Fool's Gold as one of our pirate adjacent movies, and if I remember correctly, if I remember correctly, they don't get to keep the treasure in that one either.
Well, that's also very Indiana Jones too, right? He never really gets it, even though he gets it. But there's always some other lesson or you know, some other benefit that they gain, even though they never get the MacGuffin, as it said.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really, one of the few like treasures that actually gets to be kept is like National Treasure or Fast and Furious. That I can think of off the top of my head. Which, I mean, Fast and Furious isn't exactly a treasure, but they actually get to like keep the money.
Right, but they don't. Those people
movies.
never get taught or learn any lesson, ever. That's why they have to get the treasure,
Okay, I do have one more thing before we leave, and that is whether or not we are going to induct this movie into our rated Aargh Pirate Cinematic Universe. Based on our ratings, I would say that we're probably all in a unanimous yes in terms of that. If anyone would like to say otherwise, feel free. But I think we're pretty safe to just go ahead and put this one into the RAPCU, the rap queue.
Yes.
Okay, no objections. All right.
No
well,
objections.
this is the
Parlay.
first movie that we've inducted into the rated Aargh Pirate Cinematic Universe. So, congrats to Treasure Island for being number one. I'm not entirely sure if we're going to make this like a ranking list of sorts or not yet, but we'll determine that whenever we decide to induct some more into the rap queue. Well,
For now,
guys,
it's just a Hall of Fame.
It's true. It's basically a Hall of Fame. Well, guys, it's been fun. And it's almost time for us to bring this ship to port. But before we do, we wanted to make sure that everyone listening and watching found our message in a bottle detailing next month's movie of choice. So coming May 10th, because we're going to try to have this episode up April 10th, we have another fantastic episode planned. So we will be watching and discussing Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. So we're really looking forward to that one. And we hope you enjoyed Treasure Island, and we can't wait to see where our next adventure takes us. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to follow us on Spotify, subscribe on whatever platform that you are watching this on, and we will see you in a month.
You better start believing in podcasts, Miss Swan, because you just listened to one.